So
This meeting is being recorded.
to check that out. Thank you, Catherine. Great. So as many of you know, as many of you know, Pledge 1% is a global movement that inspires, educates, and empowers every entrepreneur and company to be a force for good. Throughout our history, we have grown the movement to now include over 17,000 companies. So can I get a little clap there? Woo-woo. And has ignited over $2 billion in dollars towards that mission. So today we are excited to come together to discuss one of the most pressing issues of our time: how to balance our business interests with our responsibility to protect the planet and its. Throughout the month of April, we celebrate Earth Month and Earth Day. However, the need for corporate sustainability is a year-round necessity. At Pledge One and many of our member organizations, we believe that sustainability is not only the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do. So today we have asked two companies, OSF Digital and Liquid Donate, to share their sustainability journeys and provide our attendees with inspiration that they can take back to their own companies. We hope that this event will spark meaningful conversation and ideas that will help us move towards a more sustainable and resilient world. So thank you again for joining us. So moving into our program, it is my amazing pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. Diz Petit, founder and CEO of Liquid Donate. This is a sustainable social impact solution for business and nonprofits. She received her BA in organizational communication and her MBA in sustainable social impact. Liquid Donate combines Diz's years of experience working with tech companies to implement social impact programs that leverage their existing business models and evolving technologies with her love for the work and people of nonprofits. Prior to Liquid Donate, Diz was the 15th employee at Postmates. She has worked to build the customer service team from the ground up, launch new Postmates markets such as Seattle, New York City, thank you, DC, and Chicago, co-build their sales team, opening up a new stream of revenue for the company through the Postmates partner program. So thank you again and welcome, Diz. And we also have Namita Seth, Chief People Officer at OSF Digital. Namita leads OSF Digital's people and culture teams globally. She has played various roles across talent functions, M&A, setting up and scaling of a digital unit, and a talent pursuit leader for strategic deals. She joined OSF Digital from one of the reputed $12.5 billion global consulting and digital technology firms, where she served as vice president and HR lead. Her most years have been spent in shaping and inspiring organizations to meet growth targets, and she has a solid track record in delivering on ambitious talent agenda. So I'm so excited to have our speakers come to us and share with us today. It is a privilege to be a part of this discussion. So if we can, to start off our discussion, I'd like to provide a moment for each of our speakers to introduce us to their companies and roles. Namita, we will start with you.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that great introductions. You know, when you hear your introductions, you always like, oh, wow, you know, that's me being called upon. And thank you so much. So hi, everyone. I'm Namita, and I live in New York City. That's home for almost 7 to 8 years now. I've lived probably in different parts of the US, London for a couple of years, Sydney. India is where I come from, but more time has been spent outside of India and traveled probably a lot of places on the globe for the M&A and other work I've been doing with the companies I've worked for. And why that introduction becomes a little important is, you know, when you travel a lot, you see so many different things that companies are doing, and you are not just seeing your organization, but also so many other organizations. And in my span of almost a decade in M&A, I read about 70 companies. And it was very exciting to see how companies would bring together their talent agenda, their social imperatives in a very creative way together, that it never sounded like they're doing something as a social obligation, but it was more of a journey, which was, what we all need to do. Right. So it was always, this is the right thing to do, then this is the thing that is obligatory, or it's going to show up in some scorecards. And one of the reasons why, I joined OSF and I was in initial conversations is that OSF is not just an end-to-end, very uniquely placed digital transformation company across 25 plus countries, which is awesome for the, the revenue and the scale part of it. But it's also an organization which is doing so many things as a part of the organic fabric of what OSF stands for. And we're not just saying that we need to give back to the communities that we are working in, but we want to be a part of those communities. It's because that's where we drive our colleagues, that's where we drive our everything, right? So it's a part of, that balance equation. And OSF, we've been in business for about 19 years. And in those 19 years, the company's birthplace is Romania. So a lot of the leadership, in very early stages of the incorporation started doing so many things. Like, if I have to track back, I'm about a year and a half in the company, but there's so many amazing initiatives that started in little ways and now which are globally, like I get calls from people to, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't want to take credits for a lot of it, because it's something that's driven as a part of who we are. Right. So that's one of the messages that's very important, that when you drive the imperatives, which are either going to be social in nature, community impact, or anything which is even environmental, if you do it more as an agenda, and that's what I believe Pledge One person is also driving, is make it who you are. Don't make it like a nice shiny thing on your slides to look at, but make it who you are. And that's where I think there's a good intersection of why we chose to be a part of Pledge One person, because we are touching all those different boxes in as many ways as we can on this. So I'll just take a pause here, and I'll love to have my other co-speaker talk about herself. Please.
Well, thank you, Namita. I so can't wait to just get more into your journey. And Diz, yes, can you tell us a little bit about your path to founding Liquid Donate and its mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. My name's Diz. Like Joyce said, I was the 15th employee at Postmates, and at Postmates, we were one of the early companies with Pledge 1%, part of that early builders movement. So at Postmates, we had taken the 1% pledge for profit as well as for time. So all of our employees had paid volunteer time off, as well as we were using our profits to fund our social impact team and really cool products that our team built, like Food Fight and Bento and things like that. So when I was ready to start Liquid Donate with my co-founder Chai, we knew we wanted to join and take all of the pledges from the beginning. So with Liquid Donate, we've taken the pledge of 1% time, profit, or 1% time, product, and equity. And so we're super excited to be working with Jan and the team on the equity pledge too, because we've seen in a lot of Pledge One companies have a lot of success with that in terms of igniting more philanthropy in the community. So Joy gave a great overview of what I did at Postmates. As many of you know on this call, Postmates was acquired by Uber. And I was on the transition team with Uber for a few months, realized it wasn't the right fit. So left, took a train across the country, highly recommend everyone does that, and then was ready to start Liquid Donate. And so what we do at Liquid Donate is that we work directly with retailers, brands, and businesses to donate all of their excess inventory to nonprofits. So we're a software and technology solution that matches all of the excess inventory right now in the United States, but eventually in the whole world, with all of the nonprofits and schools who have a use for those new and like new items.
Thank you, Diz. We just so appreciate Liquid Donate. They're an amazing partner to Pledge 1% in the Builders program. So we are thrilled to have you part of this discussion today. One of the things that we at Pledge 1% encourage is pledge to action, meaning taking your energy and enthusiasm for good and putting together a plan for implementation. So, Namita, can you tell us a bit more about the formation of the OSF Digital Foundation and how it came about?
See, very early into our, existence, there were things that leadership that thought that, how should we, by the way, I just want to mention that we are a remote company in a, significant way before pandemic made remote fashionable. So we've been working remote, and having 2,200 plus employees across 25 countries is an amazing way. And it's another great example of how you can do so many things for not just the clients we serve, but also the communities we serve in a remote way. Because one of the things that I've heard in a lot of organizations is that if you're not physically placed in one location, driving any of these agendas is very difficult, because you need to really get people together. Oh, okay, I want to do some volunteering activities. I need to have a size and the volunteers with me. So I think there's a lot that I learned in my journey in the last 15 months in the company, and how the company very beautifully orchestrated the remote workforce into the journey of partnering with the community. So the community work started from social work, where we were largely partnering with disadvantaged communities from educational perspective, schools to be specific to start with, and then it began to, as we grew. So it's been a parallel journey. So as we were growing, we could, we grew and we could do more for our community. So we started partnering a lot with the colleges in many parts of the world. And today we are at a place where we are having something called Academy. It's called OSF Academy, and it's purely intentional to get more people employable in the global framework. So the Academy draws talent of any sorts from the community. Like, we are in 6 countries now: Romania, Brazil, Turkey, Spain, India, and Bulgaria. And what we are doing is we incorporate, it's an open invitation for anybody to join. You can be flipping a burger in McDonald's, or you can be anyone who wants to change a work stream. You'll be trained for free for 3 months period, and you can have an opportunity to be employed by OSF, but we make people employable for the economy and not just for OSF. So it's not just about partnering with educational institutions, which we are also doing. We have partnered with universities in Romania, where we are partnering for the setup of the curriculums, but this is more for the global economy and how we can make people more. We've done this about, if I'm getting the number right, over 600 people have been trained in last 7 to 8 years in the academy setup. So that's like an incredible gratification when you look at, oh wow, you could touch lives of so many people without even directly getting them employed to the organization. So as we were doing a lot of these things, we realized that probably we need to call it under a specific banner, and that's where we incorporated OSF Foundation in 2020. But like I said, there was a lot of work which was done minus the, foundation bit even before that. So as we got into Pledge 1%, another initiative, we were like, how do we really put, the pillars that Pledge 1% has called equity, profits, time, and even environment, right? So we were probably, sustainability needs a bit more kick, which probably we were not looking at. So that's where we partnered with an NGO called Reforest Action. And they're an organization where they help you plant trees in different forests across the world. So that's another initiative where we have got our different stakeholders, from our employees to our clients. And I'll just in a second tell you how, but you can choose. If you want to plant trees, you have to donate a certain amount of a small nominal money, and the organization will plant trees on your behalf. Now, how we are connecting some of these initiatives back to employee engagement is also, let's say there is an employee event, right? It's your birthday, and rather than sending somebody birthday gifts, which we were doing in the past, we will ask them, do you want a little swag from our side, or you want to plant a tree? And 80% plus times now we hear we want to plant a tree, right? So there is a tree plantation that happens and people can choose where they want to plant a tree. And there's a story behind why they want to plant a tree in the place they want to plant, right? So there's a lot more conversations that have got started. It's very participative. It's very organic. It's not a forced thing. It's more about your choice. What do you want to do? So we felt, and the same thing we did for our clients too, like last 2 years, instead of sending our clients year-end gifts, we're asking them if they would like us to plant trees on their behalf, right? So we feel that a lot of these small initiatives are giving us a long-term connect, and we've planted about, let me get the number right, 41,000 trees in last 2.5 years, and which is 170,000 of oxygen that has been generated out of these trees planted, and other numbers to it. So this way, again, when you look at these numbers, you're like, oh wow, and we are also following carbon neutralization for our air travel. So whatever air travel happens in the company, we equate that to how much we want to do in terms of planting trees from the OSF side. So there is little things to big things. Little things like we're not using plastic cups in the organization. We're not doing anything which is in a direct impact. We're trying to avoid. I will not say we are strict. No, if we have to print a paper, we have to give it. In Germany, you have to print an offer letter and get people signed in ink. You have to do it, but all other places where there is no such imperative, we try to go as less on paper as possible. So from small to big, the journey has been constructing one block to another, from social to environmental to education, and a lot around how do we connect all of this back to employees too. Like, do they feel part of this, and this is not something happening, oh, I have a foundation in the organization happening in isolation. No, that's not the case. Our foundation employees are really small, but mostly this is volunteering work done by employees. We let them to contribute time, efforts, and even a lot of donations. Last bit, and as I know I want to give you this over, is from a community standpoint, Ukraine was a great example where we collected almost 500,000 USD plus from our colleagues, and the donation also matched the contributions, and it was given back. And we are still on, by the way, in helping Ukraine. We have employees in Ukraine, but this was much beyond our employees. So a lot of our efforts are not just concentrated on our employees. We are doing a lot more with our employees for the community in general. I'll take a pause. So that's been our journey, Joy. I'm very passionate about it, as you can see.
I love it. And there's so many things to be passionate about. I love the equitable access, not only just domestically, but how you're looking at this globally. And just want to take a minute to breathe in that amazing oxygen air that you're helping to improve in our world. So love the efforts that you're doing from the foundation. So thank you, Namita, for sharing. Liquid Donate, what I just love about them so much is they have sustainability as a core mission of the business. So some might be like tempted to like, okay, so great, we've done that and stop there as their contribution to sustainability. However, Diz, you continue to strive for better business standards, and were recently named as California Green Business Partner, which is amazing. So can you talk about that process and what this certification means?
Sure. And I mean, it's definitely not just me. I have a lot of the team, mostly the folks who did most of this work to get the certification done on this call. So thanks to Renee and the team that helped with that. So for us, our company really focuses on landfill diversion. We are using technology to make landfill diversion happen. We are getting items to nonprofits and schools that need them. There's a lot of benefits to it, but ultimately our number one metric is landfill diversion. How much are we keeping out of the landfill and making sure that it goes into the hands of people who need it? And so we are a climate tech company. We focus on sustainability, but everybody who works here and is drawn to working in this type of business is here because of more than that. So I've personally been a community activist since I was about 16 years old. And so for me, it's part of why we do anything. And I think we all want to leave the world a better place, right? So we just won't let it rest at that being our contribution to sustainability. So we're looking at different things we can do that help us and that help other communities and other businesses. So specifically, we worked with the city of San Francisco to become a certified green business partner. And so what that entailed, so this is the link, I'll put it in the chat. If you're in San Francisco, this is the site that you can go to and the folks that you get in touch with. And someone from the city will actually come to your office if you have a physical location and do an assessment and tell you how green and eco-friendly your office is. If you work in a co-working space like we do, they'll actually also work with the building in order to get things like lower flow regulators for the sinks in the bathroom and compost bins in the with the right liners, like things that maybe you know should happen, but you don't necessarily have time for. And then the city also helps to pay for those changes. So if you are in an office or in a co-working space where money might be a little bit tight right now, for whatever reason, the city also helps on a first come first serve basis pay for these things. And what we found is that a number of other cities, especially in California, but outside of California, have programs that are similar to this. So I would research it in your own area and take a look and see if you can qualify. It's usually changing out a few lights. And the biggest thing you have to commit to, at least for San Francisco, is not serving meat at your events. And so we've had to add that into our onboarding process. And that's been an interesting one. And then the other thing that I'd like to mention, because I like to make sure that everything I say in these types of meetings and events are actionable for other people on the call, is the other very actionable thing we did is that we took a look at our 401k and what funds were being used. And so that was something that the city and the green business certification helped us remind us to take a look at, is like, what funds are you supporting through your 401k? And then they had some recommendations on funds that were a little bit more environmentally friendly. So since this is all about taking the pledge from pledge to action and creating a corporate environmental program, I definitely recommend, one, checking out if your city or state has a green business program. And then number two would be talking to your 401k team, if you have one, about what funds you can be investing in that are going to be a little bit better for the environment, because both of those things are either free or cheap, and so they're accessible to almost everybody.
Thank you, Des. That is such a unique perspective. I don't think many of us would consider that. So I love that tie-in to the 401k funding. That is just amazing. So thank you for passing that along. And in addition to this incredible resource, if you're in San Francisco or even looking for other types of these things in other cities, so that is great. And as well as your focus on landfill diversion as well. And again, breathing much better air because of all of those efforts that both of you are both implementing into your program. So thank you.
Mostly my team and mostly my
Mostly
team.
your team. I forgot. Yes, it's a team effort. So thank you again for circling back to that. Like, this is not just a one person effort. This is the entire, it's intrinsic to the ecosystem of both of your organizations. And that is just amazing. We're going to switch gears a little bit to focus a little bit on a little deeper dive into employee engagement. So one of the most important things for any corporate environmental program is employee engagement. It's one thing for leadership to express their desires to focus on sustainability, but it's another to shift company culture to focusing on this effort. So can each of you describe how you engage your employees and stakeholders throughout this process, or that your teams do throughout this process, and any challenges that that was faced today or even along the way? For example, I know that some companies are addressing, like, how do we deeply engage our virtual or hybrid employees to make those connections feel and make people feel involved in the initiatives? Would love to start with you, Namita.
Sure. First of all, Liz, I love the way you keep, focusing on the team, because, it really takes a village to do, even from a really small initiative, to plug all the points, because one can have so many ideas and be creative, but down to the last point of implementation, I think that's where the difference is made. So thank you. I think that's a good little learning for all of us, that team is always, your biggest strength in this world today. Thanks. Joy, sorry, back to your question. I think one of the early things I learned in my career was behaviors do impact a lot of things you want to do on these imperatives, because in a given day, when you come to an organization for your role, you open your mailbox and or your day, and you have your day structured by the role you are in, right? So how do you a company can have a social impact imperative, or can have a certain, charter the company wants to run, but it's like, the kindness begins at home. That's what I learned. And what I mean by that is, how do you shift that feeling of co-creation in a hybrid workforce today? And it's now probably more common to say this than I would have said 3 years back, because not too many organizations were working in hybrid spaces or remote spaces. So for us in OSF Digital, because we are so remote in so many countries, not locations, I'm talking countries, different time zones. So right from our values, so we've connected downright to our values to say, how does our values come into action on a daily basis? So we've connected the behaviors from values to behaviors is very common, but we are also doing, if there's a reward ceremony, we are talking about behaviors more than awards, right? We are talking about what is co-creation and co-inclusion in things. So we've started things like, crowdsourcing. We were reframing our values early 2022, and rather than a corporate team trying to, come back with these other new value statements, we let the employees frame the values for us. So we had top 40, then we went to top 20, and then we were finally down to, top 6 values. And this was all crowdsourced. OSF as an acronym, because we are still private, so we have that liberty to change our what we stand for. We change that every 4 to 5 years, depending how we are in the journey in the this world. And that is also coined by the employees. So this 2022 onwards, OSF stands for one step forward. So there is a lot of things that we are trying to first drive the cohesiveness on the behaviors, that how in a remote workforce you are still one team. So that's how we then drive these behaviors to the other agendas, and everyone in workforce today wants to be connected by purpose. So we are bringing the purpose back to that cohesion first, because you can build a great purpose, but there's not a team which is looking in the same direction. So there is a cohesive workforce looking in the same direction of a purpose, and then you bring these charters on the top, which are away from their day-to-day work. So you're building, I think, different blocks of what the organizations today want their employees to feel: a great atmosphere to thrive, challenging work, creativity that they can bring in, but also something they can contribute to the larger global good. So, and then it is based on, I would say, a horizontal axis of behaviors, which are we are one, right? We are one, not just for OSF, but for this, great planet Earth we are living in. So that's what we are doing. We did during pandemic, we started something called Around the World Challenge, which is from, one part of the globe, from Japan, where we are. So we followed the sun model, and we ran about 67,000. And every time there was a little polar bear that was getting moved in, different countries. And then the whole, after about a year and a half of the run, there was an amazing video that got created. I don't know if you got to have a hang of that video. If not, I would love to share that the group can see those initiatives. So I would say we are looking at things that can connect outside in, but also inside out. So that's how I would like to summarize. One thing, I don't want to forget that. Women, right? The gender diversity for us is, again, it's organic. We are not driving it as an agenda, not for numbers, but for numbers' sake, right? We are 35% gender diverse, and we are goaling ourselves to be 50%. And we are 30% senior management and above gender diverse, and which is again amazing. And there are little things done for this from from the time. A lot of our interviews, we don't use videos in the beginning unless you're in the last rounds, because we want to be no biases, just have a conversation. And when you're in the final rounds, yes, we want to have the supervisor looking at or the who you're finally getting into the workforce. But there are little things to how we trying to connect these worlds, and these are ideas generated by our employees. And that's the amazing part of, I would say, employee engagement, that I would say the power of so many good ideas, right? Because not one person can have all of these ideas. These are not my ideas, I can tell you. This is the village at the back which comes together, and my journey is to how we can bring them to action, and that's about it. So those are the things I can share, Joy.
Diz, we'll go right to you.
Cool. So as far as employee engagement goes, because we're a newer company that's purpose and mission driven, our employee engagement on efforts from volunteering to jumping in and helping other team members when we need to focus on something specific is still super strong and really tight. So that is the benefit of being a newer company that is purpose driven. Everyone who comes to work for Liquid Donate at this stage is still doing it because they believe that what we're doing is going to work. We're very much a startup. And so there's a lot of faith and excitement around what we're doing, and a need to get it done spirit. So I'll talk a little bit about the experience that I had at my previous job at Postmates, when I also was responsible for employee engagement. And what we considered employee engagement there was volunteering. So how do we get our employees to go out into the communities in which they live and work and do service? And so what we did at Postmates was we provided 21 hours of paid volunteer time that you could volunteer at any 501c3 that you felt was a good fit for you. But if you weren't sure where to get started, which is honestly where most people are in most companies who are not regularly volunteering as it is, which is, totally normal, is that we actually would publish internally 2 to 3 volunteer events every week that you could go to with your team members. We made it super easy to sign up for them. And we also helped to arrange carpools so that you could get there either going from the office or from the same community area that you were in. And putting those opportunities in front of people made it a lot easier to increase our engagement. Because once again, most people just didn't know where to start. They're like, I want to volunteer. I just don't know what to do, where to go. I need my hand held a bit. And so we were doing that hand holding to make it really easy. And then they would find a place that they really liked. They would volunteer there over and over again, or they would continue to cycle through all the different opportunities that we were presenting. And so with Postmates, it was a mix of executive support, actually having the executive team go out there and do the volunteering with the staff members, and making it the default. So I know, for example, Salesforce, which is one of the founding members of Pledge One, they have all their new employees volunteer as part of their first day. You can't get through your first day at Salesforce without volunteering. That for us isn't a good fit for a model today, but I like to present it in case it is for other companies here. And so for us, what we've committed to is outside of the paid volunteer time, the 21 hours every year that people have, is that we also have it as a requirement that every retreat that we do as a company, because we're also remote first, we will do a volunteer event. And so we build it into the schedule. So we are taking time from brainstorming or visioning or planning or whatever it might be, but having that team building opportunity where we're really making it the default that as a team, we volunteer. When we are together, we volunteer. Like that's really what we're trying to set as an example. And then the last thing I'll mention is we also at Postmates did a good job of providing unique opportunities to volunteer using your specific skill set. So for employees that maybe were uncomfortable or not interested in going to a food bank or sorting clothes, that's fine. Like everyone has their choices and preferences. So in order to respect that, like what we did is that we built products internally that we would engage designers, product managers, engineers on. So for example, we built a product at Postmates called Food Fight. And that product enabled all the restaurants that we worked with to just press a button and have us come pick up all their excess food and take it to low-income shelters and housing units across the country in 800 cities across the US. And that product wasn't built into any team's roadmap. We weren't given any extra resources for it. It was presented at a company all hands that if you want to use your volunteer time as a designer, as a data analyst, whatever your skill set was, an account manager, a salesperson, we would find a role for you in this community and you would do it async. And so with that, we were managing all these async timelines using people's volunteer hours. And we ended up building this amazing product that was able to save all kinds of food and feed lots of people. And so that was awesome. And so I think being open-minded to what works for folks is a good idea, to make sure that you're not putting things on people that they're just not necessarily interested in doing or uncomfortable doing. Getting out of your comfort zone is good sometimes, but also using your skill set if you are a technologist to really build something that is impactful can also be a really great way to go.
Wow, thank you so much. I think there's so many ideas that you both brought forth, and I love the thoughtfulness and the fact that values and purpose are really driving these efforts on every level, in addition to unique opportunities to meet employees where they're at. And I think that just makes for a successful engagement all around. So again, thank you both for those amazing ideas. And speaking of which, we're hearing all of these incredible efforts across the board. Just curious, how are you both looking at measuring and reporting on your company's sustainability and progress goals? And Des, I would love to know how you're doing that at Liquid Donate, or even in the past at Postmates.
Yeah, so with Liquid Donate, we're tracking three main things. How many pounds of material are we diverting from the landfill? How many nonprofits and schools have we helped to get specific items that they asked for and that they needed? And how much money in retail value have we saved from landfilling or incineration? And so we're tracking those on a per item basis. We've built some internal tools that help us with that. And as we continue to mature as a company, we'll use more. When we were at Postmates, the tracking tool that we used for volunteering was our volunteer tracking software. And it was called EPOCH, EPOCH. And that was our volunteer tracking tool. It had integrations with Slack. It would remind people when it was time for them to leave for the volunteer opportunity that they registered for. It did a lot of really cool things that made it easy for our employee base to stay involved, and once again, making volunteering kind of that default. And then now we use Gusto, and Gusto has the ability to add a volunteer time off policy to your offer letters, which is really great. And people can track their volunteer time that way. So that also makes it really smooth and easy to keep track of. So we're measuring those things, EPOCH, Gusto, and then some manual internal tracking. So curious what Namita's using.
So thanks, Des. When we started, our journey, we were generally, what I would like to say that, it's okay. I'm trying to rephrase what I was thinking. I think with Pledge 1%, what it also brought in is much more rigor to tracking everything that we're measuring and the impact. Because earlier we were doing a lot of things. Of course, it was by, how much contribution of our profits we are giving to the community, how many, leave bank hours are getting spread across the employees for volunteering activities, etc. But with Pledge 1%, there was another thought of, how deeply we can measure, because it's something as a company we stand for, because we are enabling digital transformation journeys of a lot of clients, and all of them want to know the impact. So how do we bring that impact in our imperatives here too? So when we partnered with the Reforest Action and also EcoDev, this is a France-based entity. They are deeply into providing you tools which can help you measure the impact that you're creating positively on the environment. So that's what Reforest Action is doing for us. And the impact goes into many, many areas that you wouldn't think of. Like for me as a commoner, I would think impact is just about planting trees, but there is much more to the impact, right? The shelters that are getting built for animals under that impact because the trees are getting planted. So you'll start looking at so many more dimensions that generally you would not. So there are some organizations that are bringing in tools which much more deeper insights that are helping us. We are still on the journey to find more. We do look at the numbers statistically from how many universities we are partnering with, numbers on the academy side, as I highlighted already. But I think some of these tools are so amazing that they help you really think in different dimensions and then work on those dimensions and not just the outcome that is one dimensional or things like that. So that's what we are doing, Joy, at this point.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you both for sharing those insights and even just how you're looking at benchmarking and social impact measurement when it pertains to sustainability. So super helpful. So at this part of the program, we would love to just take a pause and create space for a few questions from the audience. So please feel free to use the Zoom chat to do so. And I think we've already had some questions come through that have been answered by our speakers, but please feel free to include more in the chat. And while we're waiting for some questions, we can, oh, great. This is coming from Kelsey. Just one question I have. What was the process to determine metrics to track, and what were the challenges you faced, or how did you overcome those challenges? And either one can, I'll throw it to either Diz or Namita if you have an answer.
I'm not sure who this question is intended for. If it's for both of us, then I would say the process that we use to determine metrics to track, well, we looked at what was important to us and what we wanted to work towards. So when we're thinking about, obviously like as a tech startup, there's like a revenue goal, right? But like for us, we're like, yeah, of course, like we have to make revenue, like we're a business. But in the meantime, we're also making all of this great impact. And so like, this is how, like, so how do we track that? We're like, okay, well, what our company does at the smallest, easiest core level is that we take an item that was going to landfill and we move it to someone who wants it. Like, that's like the easiest way to describe what we do with it. And with that, what does that do? What does that impact? And so for us, we're like, okay, well, it keeps it out of the landfill. That's one thing we want to track. Well, we're saving money for nonprofits, which is something we want to do. We know that sometimes a nonprofit wouldn't buy a product like, this coffee cup because it's extraneous. But if they got one, they'd be like, great, like we will take that and we will use it for whatever reason we want to use it for. But then we also move things that are things they would normally buy, like laptops and cell phones and like cables and chargers and books and notepads and pens, like things that they normally would be spending money on. And so we wanted to track how much money are we saving nonprofits and schools from buying these things on their own. And then the last piece of what we track is based on the number of items. So just purely how many items are we saving? And that's mostly from a storytelling perspective we want to know, but also from a growth perspective, like how quickly are we moving items that we're getting in. So and overcoming those challenges, I mean, this is going to be the most like frank thing that I say today. We manually counted them. So like the overcoming the challenge, like we just did it because there was no system at first on how to track these things. So it was like, okay, someone donated a table from CV2. I'm going online, I'm looking it up. Like, okay, the metadata, this table says it weighs 412 pounds, like putting that into my spreadsheet. Like it's very scrappy, but like it's what we've been doing since the first item that was ever donated, until we had a better system built by one of our great engineers, because we wanted to keep track of those things. So overcoming it was painful. Like it was crappy to like manually track all of it, but it was worth it because now we like know what we're working towards. And also the last thing I want to say on this point is that we also like shed a number of metrics that we thought were important at the beginning that we were tracking and really like cut down to these three. So I would also reevaluate over time, like which metrics you're tracking and which ones are actually the most important for your business so that you're not overly tracking things that are actually just irrelevant at some point.
That is great advice. Yeah, Namita, please.
I didn't want to, sorry, Joy, I didn't want to cut you. Okay. So I really like the way this just ended because that's exactly what I was going to say, but let me say it in a different way now. I think if I go 17, 18, 20 years back, the corporate social responsibility, as it was, all these initiatives were, titled under something, I think it was an amorphous abstract because it was like everybody's doing something, but they really didn't know the journey. Somebody's volunteering time, somebody's volunteering something. So now, again, I think the way I see Pledge 1% trying to really try to bring your focus back and also encouraging companies to measure that impact. That's a great, addition to what companies are doing. How I would like to see this impact and the challenges and to this is, it's like, different strokes for different folks, right? Sometimes some initiatives come under how much you want to do, right? Some initiatives are how well you do it, right? And others can be just about, how many, like, for example, if I just take these three buckets, I was just taking some notes as this was talking. If I think of Ukraine, it's a war-inflicted zone, it was really important for us to first start with how much money we can collect, right? And how much we can then deploy back. And it started with how much, and then, looking at if we have resources, how do we deploy those resources? For the academy part we are doing, it's about people we are training, but are they ending up getting jobs? So for that is how well we are doing. So I wouldn't say how many, because it's not everything is going to be a quantifiably a big number, because I can say, oh, we trained 600 people, but how many of them really ended up in jobs? So for me, that number is not 600. For me, is how quickly they were able to get jobs, because that tells me the efficacy of the programs we are running. And in other places, it's about how many, because you want to touch more the schools that we are partnering with. At this point, we are at how many, like how many schools can we participate for volunteering time of our senior colleagues who are designing curriculums with the schools, etc. So it's different measurements. And for the initiatives you're running, I wouldn't put them under one umbrella, Kelsey, if that's the question you asked, because we tried with one just high level matrix of number, but at the end of the day, you really need to go down and see what is that number giving back as a outcome. So that's what is important.
Thank you. And Kelsey just had a follow-up question about that differentiation that you just spoke about. Is there a method that you track the numbers of people that do get jobs? Is that through like a survey metrics that you do for the people that are trained, or would you like to add any insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kelsey, yes, we are absolutely tracking those people, because if we could train them for 3 months, we could also track them for another 3 months to what exactly and where exactly they landed up with. So we're trying to even give people some more additional support, because that's where the outcome matters, right? If we are only training and people are not getting jobs, it's not really, we're also getting feedback back into how we make improvements into the process, but then also lending some people need resume support, for example. Then there are volunteers in our employees who are just able to do that outside of the program, right? So there are little things you can, connect back, Kelsey, to that. Yes, we are trying, again, it's different things for different programs. It's not one way of doing it.
Great. And we'll answer just one last question coming from Stephanie. How do you or would you position and engage your leadership team to prioritize and continue investing in environmental employee programs in light of the current macroeconomic challenges? So if Namita, if you have an answer to this, or if Diz, you're ready to go, I would love to get both of your insights on that if you have a comment.
Liz, you want to go for it?
Sure. It depends on where you work and what the value prop is for your executive team. When I was at Postmates, we were very lucky. The executive team was bought into the idea of doing good, and that being established through Pledge 1% as a requirement. Like we've pledged 1% of our time, like we have to let people volunteer. Like there was no question about it. And so it was really built into the DNA. So if your company took the pledge and your executive team agreed to it, I would maybe lean on that. Like we pledged that we would be doing 1%. That might be one route you can go, but the other route I know a lot of companies will go when they're trying to work with their executive team on getting, I mean, to me, the volunteer time piece would be mostly then you would just take that program and focus it on climate activities. So tree planting, beach cleanups, different things like that would be to really, so the other way that people go about this is that they take the data from employee surveys. If you can access that from your HR team, even if the data is anonymized, and pull out anything that references the environmental program or the giving back program or CSR, social impact, whatever it's called within your org, if it's called anything, because I have yet to meet a single person who works in social impact that when they get a question on the survey, it is not the number one reason why people say they remain at the company. So if we're thinking about employee retention statistics and employee engagement, keeping employees happy, especially in an ever-changing world in a scary financial climate, keeping them volunteering is going to help them from being burnt out and keep them retained and excited about working there. So you can lean on that if you have that access, if you have access to that data.
Yeah, I totally agree. And leadership has to be a forerunner in driving a lot of this. However, it doesn't end at leadership. It can start at leadership, but it has to be really trickle down to all parts of the organization. And that's where a lot of your other engagement activities you drive. Can you relate it back to bringing people? Because nothing is going to connect people better than a purpose, right? So I'll give you a good example, Stephanie. We did some, this was, wine sessions back in, pandemic, perhaps people having the, turnaround in those events was less than what we see when they go for volunteer activities, right? So just a simple way to measure, right? So that means that people, when they see real impact happening and when they feel that they are involved because they're part of that, right? You bring yourself to be a part of those initiatives. That's where most of us, I would like to believe, want us to be contributing. The other part is, there are challenges, especially let's say volunteer time off, right? And there's always a conversation about utilization that, like I'm in an IT environment, therefore the word utilization of, the employees. So it's about how do you see other imperatives? How do you build this into your policies of vacation or PTO? There are ways you can be creative. You don't have to break the bank in the economically challenged environment to do some of these, especially in a remote environment. I would feel that there's nothing better that connects the individuals than the way we can bring them together on these initiatives. And it's not about breaking the bank. You can still do it very creatively. And people like volunteering their extra time. They're not, clocking these hours on their effort tracking. This is out of their personal time a lot of times. But this is what my experiences have been.
Thank you both so much. There's been incredible information that you've shared, and more importantly, the inspiration that's been shared today. So as we start to wrap up, I just, I think it's what even those ending notes are just encouraging us and these companies that are on the call today, just to think of their own questions and struggles or challenges that they have in building a program, and then aligning that with some of the amazing resources that they have to offer, and how you guys have done that so succinctly and thoughtfully, even with ups and downs in that journey. So just appreciate that. And we'll continue this discussion on our online community. So please utilize the Pledge 1% community platform. And it can be accessed via the chat. I think Catherine just shared that. So we also invite you to check out the Climate Playbook, which can be accessed through the link in the chat for further resources. You'll need to log in on the online community. And if you have any trouble to do that, just please let us know. So we would love to hear all that your companies are doing to turn Pledge into action, and encourage you to share those resources with your fellow Pledge 1% members. So please insert them into the chat and we'll share them out in a wrap up. It's always great to get that peer-to-peer connection points, and also just to see what other folks are doing in the space of sustainability and what we talked about today. And it always can jar some unique opportunities for your own strategies. So I would love to get to some final thoughts. So thank you again to our speakers today. We have heard a lot about the transformational work being done in the world, and I'm just encouraged and energized by the work you both are doing and that you're bringing forth in each of your companies that just impact us all. So just thank you for that. And just wanted to see if there was any just final words to share with the team, with our incredible Pledge 1% community, just to wrap up in just a simple sentence or less. Diz, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who came. I realized at the beginning I should have defined like, what does an environmental program even mean? And so I would probably back up if I could do it again and start there with an environmental program can be anything from something that you are partnering with another org on to something that you're doing yourself. That could be a really small start, could be something really big. So environmental program is what you make it, and everyone can do it, and it doesn't have to be something huge right out of the gate. So better to start somewhere.
Love that.
Agree. And again, thank you so much for everyone being such an incredible audience. As HR and people, colleagues, a lot of you from the HR domain, I think we're always in the center stage of the word retention, satisfaction, employee engagement, and then the larger community that we are in, right? So there are so many ways available today with organizations like Liquid Donate coming into it's one of the organizations that there's so many things that I learned from this today in the session, but yes, there is so much out there that you can do it in a very small way and bring all of this together. There is a very simple intersection points, and like I said, it's not about breaking the bank to do this. There's so much you can do by getting your employee workforce. What has worked for us in OSF Digital is a lot of crowdsourcing of ideas and also implementation. So, but you do need a program management on the top. So as HR colleagues and people who are, taking this to their organizations, I would say from ideas to execution, the program management is one of the most important things that help these initiatives really take wings. Thank you so much. Thanks, Joy, for your anchoring this.
Wonderful. It was an amazing conversation. I wish we could do it all day, but we do have to say goodbye. So stay tuned to the community platform as we continue this conversation over the next few months. And also just appreciate everybody taking the time to be in here today, and wishing you all well, and have a wonderful day as we look to impact and create a change in our world together and through the Pledge 1% movement. So great to have you all join us today. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.